Soil is just an amazing medium. You think of this thin veneer of the top 6 or 12 inches of the planet Earth and how much life on Earth depends on that top 6 or 12 inches. It's just amazing.
Funding for Built on Agriculture is provided in part by Manitoba Government, Growing Forward 2, a federal, provincial, territorial initiative, Government of Canada, MacDon Industries, Monsanto Canada, the Bicentenary of the Red River Selkirk Settlement Committee, and the members of Prairie Public.
The land and the environment presented severe obstacles to the Selkirk settlers when they arrived in Manitoba in the early 1800s. With the simplest of equipment and a great amount of determination and grit, they eventually managed to plant and harvest a crop. They would be hard-pressed to recognize the complex machinery and even some of the crops that appear in farming today. They would recognize the determination of today's farmers and, of course, the one constant: the rich black soil.
One of the things to think about is 10,000 years ago, we would have been at the bottom of Old Lake Agassiz. And that's really sort of the base on which our soils in the Red River Valley have formed. We're living and working and farming on old lake bottom sediments that are really rich in clay. And these have lots and lots of nutrients. They can hold lots and lots of water, but man, they can be difficult sometimes because water doesn't flow through them very easily. They're very sticky when they're wet, but very productive, fertile soils.
I'm Jim Jansen, and we're in St. Francis Xavier, Manitoba. We operate Windy Creek Farms. It's a family farm operation. We're growing canola, red spring wheat, and soybeans. Here in Manitoba, we have a very short window. Our 110 to 120 day growing season. You got to return a lot of the money back into the farm. Be careful on how much you take out personally. You have to be satisfied at some times with not very much. And after you've lost money per acre, it takes a while to get that back. The crop that we have this year is quite timely. After 2 tough years, a third one would not have worked very well for us. There's nobody that has control over the markets. There are factors throughout the world that affect everything that we grow is affected by worldwide circumstances. So, I mean, I find it interesting and challenging. Am I the world's greatest marketer? No. Is it a game? You might think it is. People say if you're not growing, you're not moving forward. We've come to a point in our operation, we've stayed around the 6,400 acres for the last 12 plus years. We're comfortable at that level, and instead of expanding, I would like to do a better job on those acres. Definitely farming is a business. There's just too much money involved. Yeah, I mean, there is a lifestyle. Nobody tells me when to get up in the morning or when to punch in or when to quit. That's up to me. And if you can't deal with that, if you need some supervision, it's probably not going to work. It's not for everybody, but the field is open. You can always buy a farm somewhere.
Farmers by nature, by their existence, they risk. I've yet to meet a farmer that fails to understand what risk is all about. Anybody that invests a lot of money and throws all of the products that they buy onto the soil with the great hope of reaping something from that is a risk taker. Farmers minimize their risk through knowledge and through active testing on their own.
There's an old saying in risk management, if you don't manage your risks, they could very well end up managing you. It's a leap of faith to go into business on your own, and farming is absolutely that. There are a lot of moving parts in developing an appropriate crop in an appropriate way without having an impact on the environment or your land base. Every year is an unknown.
I'm Cam Henry. You're in Oak River, Manitoba, which is on the western side of the province and a little bit north of TransCanada. I'm a farmer, and in the farming context, we're in the seed business. So we grow, process, and retail seed. We're what you call in Manitoba a century farm. So we go back to the early 1880s. So my grandfather was here first, my dad, myself, and now my daughter and son-in-law are farming with us. When I was young, I started in terrible times. I started in the late 60s. It was terrible times. We weren't making any money at all, and yet I saw nothing but opportunity. And now we're in very good times, and when I'm looking around, I'm looking for the pitfalls. Just as you get older, you get a little more conservative, and you get a little. You don't have as much time to catch up if you make a major mistake. In agriculture, as the more acres you apply to grain farming, the cost per acre to seed them of input costs is the same. So much fertilizer per acre, so much spray, so much seed, those things are the same, whether you got 100 acres or 1,000 acres or 10,000 acres. So you do put a lot of money out there at risk if the world turns against you. And the one thing that farming does have is you have to be willing to take risk. The biggest factor that affects how well my farm produces is the weather, and I can't control it. That's a tough game to be in if the biggest influencing factor you can't control.
When we look at what does it cost to outfit an average Manitoba farm, you're going to look at well over $1 million in new equipment, easily. Farmers are adopters. Farmers are innovators. They are continuously adopting and adjusting all the time, and a product, solution, service, technology provides a true value to a farm operation, it will be adopted very quickly. Precision agriculture, it's a bit of a mindset. It's the ability to measure, monitor every single task on a farm. And how do I attain the highest efficiencies out of every task, every operation on my farm? I know my cost of production, and how do I get the maximum yield, the maximum efficiencies, and eventually how do I control all the variables on my farm? If I can control it, how do I adjust it to make it work best for me and minimize my risks? You can't discount experience. It's still critical. Understanding the land capabilities and what it can do and can't do based on history and time still plays a critical role. I think what's changing is the amount of evidence, data that can now be collected, and that ability to do a more in-depth analysis and to look at what has changed on my farm over the last 10 years and what am I seeing? Has my soil changed? Has the weather changed? What has been the impact of the crop rotations that I have? That is all captured now through documentation, through the equipment. Two crops that have seen dramatic increases in acres would be corn and soybeans in Manitoba, and that sort of reflects the nature of farming, is that you continue to evolve, and whether it's weather patterns changing or the market's changing, growers, farmers will continue to adopt, adjust, and look for where can I get the maximum efficiency out of my land, but also the profitability. 20, 30 years ago, the focal point of that tractor was the operator. Now on that tractor, the focal point of that piece of equipment is that monitor or that computer. That computer is running that piece of equipment now. And so the operator now is sitting and monitoring the activity of that tractor instead of driving it. The tractor will drive itself now.
I'm Brett Sheffield from Pilot Mound, Manitoba. In our area, we mostly grow wheat and canola. We also grow barley, and we're starting to grow some soybeans. But basically, we're planting and harvesting grain to sell as a commodity. I'd grown up on the farm and always enjoyed being in the country, but really until I'd moved away and realized kind of the opportunities and how much I enjoyed living in Pilot Mound and in the country, I hadn't realized that that's what I'd pursue for a career. I was lucky that my parents had a small farm when I came back, so I was able to run their equipment. It wasn't anything fancy, but it was able to get the crop in. Good prices and some good weather turned out well for me, and I've been able to expand constantly each year to now where I'm at the point that I can buy my own equipment. I was excited a few years ago we got our first tractor with air conditioning, so that was kind of nice, and now we've moved on to where we're running about 3 computer screens right in our cab. I came in when it was really a year before kind of this commodity price boom, and I was able to buy my land at a more affordable price. Since then, in our area alone, it's jumped about 300 to 350%. So that's helped my net worth, but as far as buying land goes, right now I can't afford it, so I'm leaning more towards renting and going that way to try to get cash flow early on in my farming career. I guess we're all risk takers because it's such a high input, high risk, weather variable industry that we're in. But I guess I've just constantly tried to expand, constantly tried new things, and taken things that I've learned at university and just tried to make those happen on the farm, and it's really helped me grow. I've been able to grow over 1,000% since I've started farming, so it's worked out really well so far. Well, I think the whole aspect of the business of farming now has completely changed. We've moved into auto steer, we've moved into beautiful tractors instead of open cab tractors, or even before that a horse and buggy. So it's making farming a really attractive business to get involved in. It's something that's really exciting, it's something that's fun to do, and really we're moving away from the lifestyle thing to more of a business. I think that one of the main trends that we're seeing is the increase in land prices is pushing us to do things to really increase our productivity on our current land base. Where before we were looking to expand and increase our overall productivity that way, now we're looking at what we can do to increase productivity on a per acre basis. And that's going to be able to help maintain growth of bushels to help feed the growing population. I'm extremely passionate about farming. It's something that I wake up every day thinking about. It's something that on my off time I spend time researching. It's just such an incredible industry to be involved in, where we're involved in every single part of our business. We're there for planting the seed, we're watching to make sure that it's growing, and we're there to harvest it. So in every single part of the business, we're able to sit there and be involved in it and watch something that we've done in the beginning of the year and see how it turns out in the output in the end.
If you think of any big food company, one of the ways they can get a competitive edge is to come out with new and novel products. So some variation on what they've done or something completely new. It's estimated that the success rate of new products in the food area is about 20–25%. So there's a lot of failures out there. A general area that product development is going in is to try to address the desire for people to eat healthy, using the kitchen cabinet rather than the medicine cabinet. There's a couple of things that drive food technology and food science and new products. Safety is one, but the other one is convenience and availability and variety. And as a result, you're going to get these convenient foods that people seem to crave. We're market driven. You've got consumers out there that say, I've got 15 minutes, I've got to prepare a meal for 4 and get the kids off to whatever sport they're in. And so, yeah, the pre-prepared packaged food is a convenient item that is in demand by the consumer. Yes, the nutrients will be less than what we'd have if they'd prepared it from the whole food on the edge of the supermarket. But it's a balancing act, and hopefully they're not doing that every single day. I think what you have to keep in mind is that agriculture doesn't exist on its own, food science doesn't exist on its own, nutrition doesn't exist on its own. There's got to be collaboration. You've got to understand what markets you're targeting, even when you're planting your crop. I mean, if we have a sudden demand for pasta, then we're going to be switching from a hard red spring wheat to a durum wheat, because that's the type of wheat that gets used in pasta. And then as a processor, we have to know how to handle that material. So there has to be good communication with the secondary processors, with the primary producers, and a good knowledge of the markets as well.
I'm Doug Chorney, and I live and farm in East Selkirk, Manitoba, just north of Winnipeg. My grandfather came to Canada and started farming in 1903, and my parents established the yard site where I'm farming after that in 1939. Well, many people think of Western Canada as being all prairie and people just turned over the sod and started farming. Our family broke bush. We were in the dark black soil zone, which is quite stony and full of trees, and our parents and grandparents did a lot of breaking of land, but my grandfather worked quite hard at that. By 1928, they were farming nearly 3,000 acres and had 75 horses on the farm to provide power. Today on our farm, we still grow wheat, and we grow oats and soybeans and canola, and grow some vegetables on a small basis for the fresh market. That we have a retail store right on our farm and sell produce to the public, as well as being a commercial grain farm. But it's something my mother started in the 60s, and we've let it evolve over the years, and I became really enthused with it when I was in university and made it my summer job to operate that business in partnership with my parents. And now my daughter's in university and 19 years old, and she's become a partner in the business and is really active in the management and running of the store. So it is a nice way for the family to transition into making business decisions and also interacting with the public, which is a valuable life skill you can use in whatever career you pursue. Well, I've come to this line of work out of a desire and love of the practice of producing food. I'm actually a professional engineer by training and worked off the farm after university for several years, and decided when my daughter was born actually that I wanted to be home more and have a life that accommodated time with my family. And I quit my job in 1993 to farm full-time, and I've made sacrifices perhaps in my professional career, but I feel it's been well worth it. It is very fulfilling to be a farmer, and it's a challenge at times from an economic point of view to get through and maintain the standard of living that you become accustomed to when you're in a salaried position. And thankfully my wife has kept her job, and she's a nurse, but you'll find that quite often with young farmers now that there are multiple incomes coming to the household to keep everything going and make it sustainable. Well, because we have this retail store on our farm, I have the chance to talk to consumers all the time that come to visit us, and I'm always amazed at their curiosity as to what is going on the farm, because there isn't really a chance to experience that inside the city. In Winnipeg, when you go to the grocery store, everything you need you can generally find. And it's only when they want something unique, like fresh produce, that they come out to a farm. And when they see all the other things going on, I'm really encouraged by the fact that they want to know more about how food is produced and hear the stories of what's going on the farm. So there is an appetite, not just for food, but for knowledge about how their food's produced. More so in recent times with food safety issues, people are becoming a lot more aware of the fact that it's a good thing to have farmers in Manitoba producing food close to home.
So I get to go all over the province of Manitoba speaking to students like you about agriculture, because
So Agriculture in the Classroom is a very dynamic organization here in the province, and what we do essentially is connect students at all ages, so kindergarten to grade 12, to agriculture, to understand what agriculture means to them in their everyday life. So we want them to understand, of course, that the food on their plate comes from agriculture, but we take it even further than that, and so that they understand that agriculture is all around them. It's the floor we walk on, it's paint on the walls, it's things they might not even think about. It's the toothpaste they use in the morning. So we want them to understand that agriculture is around them every day in everything they do, and help them make that connection. We have a very successful program called the Made in Manitoba Breakfast Program. We come into the school and we feed the whole student body a hot breakfast coupled with an educational component that they learn about everything they're about to eat and how that should matter to them. And then the students get to eat a hot breakfast, and everything on the plate is a Made in Manitoba product. And then the finishing touch on that is when we serve up the food, the people representing and serving up each of the food items are farmers who produce that food right in the communities where we are. I measure success when we walk out of a school after a program and you've got kids thanking farmers for what they did to make that food appear on the plate.
Most people that are engaged in actual primary production, raising animals, the vast 99.9% of them do think that they are respectful and that they are stewards and that they are doing something very important and that they do care about the animals. We do teach about welfare and what the animals needs because our understanding of that has changed over time. But fundamentally, I think the underlying principle upon which really livestock production, farming is based, is that aspect of stewardship. It's of actually caring for these animals. As some people would say, why else would I do it? It's not a 9-to-5er. It is something that requires a lot of work and effort, a lot of focus in that responsibility. And yes, there are some bad actors out there, but that is not the majority. So for us in our teaching, not only do we try to teach about welfare and our knowledge and our understanding currently about what animals need and what's important to them, and also all the production aspects, but we also encourage an understanding and the questioning of oneself, right? Okay, is what you're doing, are you in fact paying attention to what the animal, to the individual animal and what they need? But also an understanding of what the consumer is concerned about. And how do you deal with that concern? You can't ignore it. You know, that's your market basically as well. You can't ignore it. How do you deal with it?
My name is Marg Rimple and I live southeast of a little community called St. Anne, Manitoba. We're a mixed farm. We're growing a lot of feed grains for our hog enterprise and we're also growing some cash crops. I'm closer to retirement than I am to the beginning of my farming career, and I get really enthused and very energized and excited seeing the next crop, the next generation of farmers coming onto the scene. And I think back 35 years ago, we also had that much energy and drive and enthusiasm to experiment and do new things. It's really great to see that continue. Right? We have a tendency to think all the really good ideas and good visions and good dreams are going to die with us. And it's really good to be reminded that that's not the case, that there's a significant next generation that's very enthused about food production.
What's up?
My husband passed away 9 years ago, so I operate as a widow. My oldest son has returned to the farm after a bit of time away and is certainly interested in making his future on the farm. There are a number of ways to transfer farms. It comes down to each generation sort of having to buy the farm again, which is a significant challenge. From when you begin your farming career in your early 20s, you're already doing estate planning because the retiring generation has to have enough from the farm to sustain them through their senior years. So it's a huge challenge, and it is for every generation. But we can't always count on the financial rewards to carry us through. So sometimes we need the passion, we just need the plain grit to get us through some of the more difficult times. If you ask us as farmers, is your farm a business? And we say yes, it is. But it is also a lot more than that too, right? It is also where we live. It binds up our family and has so many threads woven together that it is a business, but it's not necessarily a cut and dry, easy to separate business. The spiritual dimension almost of living on the land and from the land. Certainly by the time we get to older age, that's just really part of us. So in terms of leaving it, I think I can leave it externally, but internally, no, it's probably always there. Once a farmer, always a farmer? Yeah, probably.
To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to pluck up that which is planted.
Funding for Built on Agriculture is provided in part by Manitoba Government, Growing Forward 2, a federal, provincial, territorial initiative, Government of Canada, MacDon Industries, Monsanto Canada, the Bicentenary of the Red River Selkirk Settlement Committee, and the members of Prairie Public.
To order a copy of the 4-part series Built on Agriculture, call 1-800-359-6900 or visit our online store at prairiepublic.org.